I'm so proud to be part of the A Rocha Canada movement. In many ways, I see this as a goal of A Rocha's work, to help people feel more whole.
We just felt a real sense of love and welcoming.
I felt more connected with the land and the other creatures living here.
A place of peace and restoration.
Encouraged to care for God's creation, and it's so wonderful to do it in community.
They seem to really embody the heart of what A Rocha is all about, in practical conservation and in worship.
We're really hopeful for the future with A Rocha.
I think that when we love something, there's a real desire to care for it. My hope for creation is that more people will come to fall in love with the natural world.
My hope for creation is that all of us, plants, animals, and people, will learn to fall in love with each other.
My hope for creation is that as we look forward to the certainty of our true selves being restored, that would be the same for creation.
Humans can learn once again how to live in reciprocity and generosity with each other and with the natural world.
My hope for creation is that more and more people will choose to encounter God through creation.
My hope is that people understand the importance of caring for the land they live on.
We are deeply connected to and dependent on the land.
You know, the thing is that we need you now more than ever. If people don't love their surroundings and love nature, they'll never be moved to save it.
We are made to care for creation, and yet so many of us lack an imagination and an experience of what earthkeeping looks like in day-to-day life.
It brings the world together.
We think it's just such a wonderful privilege to be invited to take care of the places and creatures that God has made. Our hope is that more people would attend to this invitation.
Happy 20th anniversary, A Rocha Canada.
Hello, welcome, good evening, and a big welcome to everyone. Friends, family, colleagues, partners, volunteers, current staff and interns, former staff and interns, and to those who may be completely new to A Rocha this evening. My name is Jason Biasi. I teach preaching at the Vancouver School of Theology, and I serve on the board of A Rocha Canada, and I get to serve as your MC this evening. The reason for our gathering is this very special birthday. A Rocha Canada, 20 years old, transitioning from a gangly teenager, all limbs, to a fully fledged adult. But you know, the cool kind, not like most adults, right? The video we just watched is a compilation of highlights from your responses to our ask for you to share your A Rocha story with us. Thank you to those who have sent your story. We welcome more of your stories after tonight, stories we can share to invite others into our work and community. You'll receive a link from us after the event. Tonight, we want to offer a glimpse of our work, past, present, and future, and hear stories of those who have given so much and received from the work, to hear about God's work of love in our history. And we want to invite everyone to be a part of the future of A Rocha. You may also have heard we have a keynote interview with one Dr. Katharine Hayhoe. Happy birthday, A Rocha Canada. Here we go. Now, some house rules for our event. One is, I think you may already know, this is being recorded, and this recording will be distributed as widely as we can, including to your boss and your mom. So behave. Participants will be kept on mute to avoid issues, so please use the chat for encouragement and comments and reactions, and to directly message people you know. Rick Faw is keeping you company and babysitting you in there. You can also use the react buttons. And you are invited to keep your video on so we can see each other's lovely faces. If your stream gets too laggy or slow, turning off the video helps with that. And now if you'll turn with me in prayer, let us pray. God, our mountain stronghold, Christ, our rock, we gather to thank you for 20 years of A Rocha Canada, for an organization that loves creation, loves its neighbors, and loves to introduce them to one another. Thank you for every fish and frog, every vegetable and research datum, for every volunteer hour and dollar given, for every patch of land healed and conscience raised, and every abundant meal. We pray for more creation healed, more eyes raised, more neighbors blessed, more critters known, more land studied and loved and protected, until Christ returns and creation is healed and the world is new made. We pray by the strength of your Holy Spirit. Amen.
Hi, my name is Luke Wilson. I serve as the CEO for A Rocha Canada, and I am privileged to be in Hamilton, where A Rocha, Ontario works and lives within the Halton-Hamilton watershed of Lake Ontario on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Attawandaronk, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and Mississauga First Nation, covered by the Dish with One Spoon covenant.
Hi, my name is Zoe, and I'm the Manitoba Program Manager for A Rocha Canada. I'm standing here at the edge of the Assiniboine Forest in the watersheds of the Red and the Assiniboine Rivers. We in A Rocha, Manitoba want to acknowledge that the land that we gratefully live, work, and play on is Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and it is the homeland of the Métis Nation. We also acknowledge that here in Winnipeg, we get our drinking water from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation. And the work that we do at the Boral Ecology Centre in East Braintree, Manitoba is in Treaty 3 territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe.
My name is Christy Juteau. I'm standing here by the Tataloo, the Little Campbell River, and I just want to say how grateful I am to be working in this watershed, the Tataloo Little Campbell River watershed, on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish people, the Semiahmoo, Kwantlen, Stolo, and Saanich peoples. And I feel very honored and grateful to be growing in relationship with the Semiahmoo people and working alongside them to care for this place.
My name is Cindy Verbeek, and I'm the Northern BC Project Coordinator with A Rocha in Houston, BC. And we are so privileged to work at the Fish Hatchery and Nature Center within the unceded traditional territories of the Lac-Silyu clan of the Wet'suwet'en people.
A Rocha transforms lives through experience in creation. It's awfully hard to love or defend what you haven't experienced firsthand. So let's hear a bit from our recent interns who are based in BC this spring.
A Rocha is a place where minds are opened.
Through A Rocha, I've seen more of a vision of how I could be involved. I knew that creation care was something that was important to me. I think there is value to being faithful to that calling. I just appreciate creation more by studying it. It's, I think, really important for my journey as well.
I didn't actually know what creation care was until I got here. It's very interesting to have this like mind, body, spirit involvement in earth keeping. There's this like ongoing changing process that seems to happen while you're here.
I've learned what it's like to work alongside of taking time for rest, getting used to practicing slower pace rhythms.
I feel like I have more respect for the different species that live around me. It just makes me think of the whole ecosystem too. I care for it more. I have more compassion for it. It has definitely helped me in my own journey with creation care.
God's intentional and careful design doesn't really stop at the full picture of things, but it actually dives so much deeper down into the individual. He provides for the song sparrow, and he provides for the lichen under my feet, and in the same tone, he provides for me too.
We continue to invite others to share in our special way, to come and see, as Jesus says, and to be transformed by a deeper knowledge of place. In this coming year, A Rocha is broadening that invitation through an awareness-raising video campaign we're developing with the Wakefield creative team. We now premiere, for the first time on planet Earth, the first video of this campaign.
You believe in the importance of the air we breathe, of the natural space around you, the water we drink, homes for every creature.
Not just for you, but for all those around you and those who will come after you. And you have an important role to play, not just in taking action for the planet today, but in healing it for the future.
Because you can help us monitor at-risk species, raise up the next generation who will restore the natural world.
Connect more people to creation.
Because the more we experience, the more we love. The more we love, the more action we take. You are more important than you think.
Let's make an impact together.
And now we're excited for our keynote discussion with a celebrated partner and friend. This keynote segment is sponsored by Canada. Dr. Katharine Hayhoe is a Canadian atmospheric scientist who studies climate change. She serves as professor of political science at Texas Tech University. And Katharine, I have to say, my wife, Jaylyn, in the next room is a graduate of Texas Tech and is thrilled by your work in particular. Of course, the whole planet needs it, though. So Katharine is director of the Climate Science Center there. And this past year, she joined the Nature Conservancy as chief scientist for that organization and launched her book, Saving Us, a client scientist's case for hope and healing in a divided world. Katharine's been named among Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world, Fortune's World's Greatest Leaders, and the United Nations Champions of the Earth. Katharine, it seems to us that God has raised you up and gifted you for precisely the moment we're in. And our own Luke Wilson, who serves as CEO of A Rocha Canada, who will be interviewing Katharine. Luke completed his Master's of Business and Nonprofit Management at Trinity Western University before joining A Rocha in 2009. He worked for the Sierra Club and World Vision, and he enjoys giving back to the charitable sector by volunteering on the board of the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities.
Thank you so much, Jason, and welcome, Katharine. Where exactly are you?
So I am in Glasgow. If you look out the window right beside me here, you look right at the buildings where the big negotiations are being held. It's literally 1 block away from here. And I have to begin with apologies from all of the A Rocha Canada people who are here in Glasgow, because the big Christian Climate Observers dinner was tonight. And I bolted out the door with my dessert in a box, and they are still there for the rest of the event. Not just the dessert, lots of talking and speeches and acknowledging people. But they'll be able to watch the video, right?
They will indeed. We're thankful for your time and staying up late with us too. It's probably late there.
It is 11:15.
Wow. Hey, well, let's jump right in, Katharine, if you're ready to go. We've got a great group of people here with us. We're so thankful that you've joined us. And one of the things I want to start off with is if you could tell us about your favorite place in creation and what you love about it.
I can. I imagine we might share the same place. It's Muskoka in Canada. And I grew up, running through the woods every summer at my family's cottage. It isn't just my family. It was all of my uncles and aunts, second, third, and fourth cousins all have cottages around the same bay and have been going there since my great-grandparents went there for their honeymoon back in the early 1900s. And so being able to spend the entire summer outside in God's creation, rising with the sun, swimming in the lake, running through the bushes and the trees, getting poison ivy occasionally, and going to bed when the sun set, and being able to tell the weather from the direction of the wind and the color of the sky at night, and just being completely immersed in that world from a child. Just it's something that we take for granted when we're in it. And then once we grow up and we spend so much of our time indoors, we just realize what an amazing opportunity that is. And for many at A Rocha, you are still able to do that.
Oh, I love Muskoka's beautiful, beautiful country, beautiful area. So you've recently written a book, and we'd love to hear a little bit about the journey that inspired you, because it relates to the topic of tonight, hope. It's called Saving Us, a Scientist's Case for Hope and Healing in a Divided World. So could you just tell us a little bit about the journey?
Yes, it definitely was a journey. I'm not a big book writer. I don't just sit down and turn out a new book every year. I only write a book when I feel like there's a need for it. And so what I started to notice about 5 years ago was that I was starting to see the same question rise to the top again and again, no matter who I was speaking to, no matter where I was. I could be speaking to a group of business people. I could be speaking to a church. I could be at a university speaking to an academic audience. I could be speaking to a community group. Wherever I was speaking, and it could be in Canada or the US or Europe or further abroad, I would see the same question again and again, rising right to the top. And that was, what gives you hope? And right behind it was often, how do I talk about this to my family member or somebody I work with or my neighbor or my elected official? How do I have conversations about this issue, and what gives you hope? So that's why I decided to write the book, to answer those two questions, because everyone is looking for hope. And in fact, I don't have the numbers for Canada, but in the United States, 70% of people are already worried about climate change. And I actually do have that number for Canada, we're 74%. So most of us, 3/4 of us, are worried about climate change. But in the US, 50% of people surveyed feel helpless and hopeless when it comes to climate action. They don't know where to start, and they don't think that we can fix it. And I would venture to say that a lot of Canadians would probably agree with that too. So that's why I wrote the book.
Beautiful. I've been blessed many times to hear you share your hope, and it's contagious, the stories you share. And you, of all people, would be one to be despairing, but you're not. And it's so encouraging, Katharine. Thank you. Can you give us a little bit more of the personal side of how do you respond to the constant news stories about the fate and state of the earth, part of God's wonderful creation? How do you personally respond?
Well, today we face twin crises: biodiversity loss and climate change. And climate change is basically making everything else worse. Let's just put it that way. Climate change is a threat multiplier. That's actually a military term. It takes issues that we are already struggling with, including habitat loss, deforestation, biodiversity loss, as well as poverty, hunger, disease, lack of access to basic sanitation and clean water. And climate change makes these issues worse. Climate change stands between us and a better future. No matter what goals we are trying to accomplish, if we're trying to accomplish any goals at all for the benefit of people or living things on this planet, climate change is like the hole in the bucket. We put all of our effort and our time and everything we have into this bucket to try to fix whatever issue it is we're working on. And there's a hole in the bottom that is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's climate change. And that's why we have to fix it. We have to fix the hole in the bucket so we can fix everything else that's wrong with the world. So where do I find my hope? Well, when I first started to be asked this question, I had to think about that myself. I knew where I didn't find it. And I do not find it in each new scientific report that comes out, telling us that climate is changing faster to a greater extent than we thought. And I don't find it in politics either. So many people place their hopes in a politician, a party, a policy, or in the meeting that's happening literally right over there, a block away outside the window. And then they quickly get disappointed, frustrated, angry, and depressed. Because we humans are never going to be able to respond perfectly. And if that's where we look for our hope, we are always going to be disappointed, to the point where today there's even some people who have descended into a form of doomerism, where they're just absolutely convinced there's nothing that could ever fix this. And instead of just eating, drinking, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, as it says, so to speak, in the Bible, instead of doing that, they're out there trying to spread their doomerism to other people. And the reality is, though, is that we are only doomed when we decide that we are, because there is a grain of hope in the science, and it's this: our future is literally in our hands. What is going to happen in the future is 100% up to us. Our choices today will determine our future, and what is at stake is the future of human civilization as we know it. Whether or not that persists is up to us, and it is not too late to save ourselves and to save many of the other living things on this planet. But hope goes further than that. We find hope when we act. Rather than being paralyzed by fear, when we act together with others, we find hope. And we see this reflected in the Bible. So in Timothy, it talks about how God has not given us a spirit of fear, but instead has given us a spirit of power. That's an old-fashioned word for empowered agency, the ability to act. Instead of being paralyzed, we can act. In Romans, it talks about how suffering begets perseverance, and perseverance character, and character leads to hope. So there's a sense of getting involved, adding your hand to that boulder, pushing it down the hill, looking to see who's beside you, working together with others as part of a body. We're not supposed to be, one finger doing its job over here and a liver doing its job over here, and then, one of the bones and the toes doing its job over here. We're all supposed to be part of a body working together, and that's where we find hope. But ultimately, our hope comes from love. Because as Paul says in Romans, our hope does not disappoint, because the love of God has been poured out in our hearts. And so when things are darkest, when it seems like there's only the tiniest ray of hope, when it seems like there's almost no possibility of a better future, we know who holds the future. We know whose hands that future lies in. And we know that he has given us a spirit of power to act, a spirit of love to have compassion on others and act on their behalf, a sound mind to make good decisions based on the information we have. And we also know that we are called to do no more than simply to walk in the good works that he has already prepared for us in advance. Each of us individually and uniquely, God has given us the abilities, he's given us the talents, he's given us the opportunity, and he's even given us the motivation to do the work that he has called us particularly. And whatever you do is something different than what somebody else does. Each of us is unique, and God handcrafted us, so to speak, to do exactly what we are doing. And that's what we're called to do. We aren't called to save the world individually. We are just called to participate in God's saving work with the works that he's already prepared for each of us. And that thought, often when you kind of get overwhelmed, doesn't that just sort of make you relax? You just kind of take a deep breath. It's like, I'm in the right place. God has it all planned out. God's given me everything that I need for life and godliness to walk in those steps. And it's just one foot in front of the other. I don't need to know 10 steps ahead in the path. All I need to know is the next thing. And I know who knows the next one, and he'll take care of it.
It's so encouraging, Katharine. You summarized that so beautifully, and it empowers us to take the next step. Indeed. I'm going to go off script for a second because I know you're good for it. And we're going to get into sort of, the question about what do we do now, immediate action, but you've got a plethora of stories that you've collected from all the conversations you've had. Are there one or two particular actions that you've seen people take that, keep you motivated and keep you going and excite you? Could you share one of those or two of those with us?
Sure. So I love it when I hear stories about how people's minds are opened. And how do we open people's minds? By talking about the issue. Because it turns out most of us are not talking about it. We don't want to be more depressed than we already are. We don't want to pick an argument or anything like that. And so we just don't talk about it. But when people do talk about it, and when I say talk about it, I'm not talking about unloading a bunch of sciencey sounding facts on people. And I'm not talking about guilting them for not doing whatever you think they should be doing. Those are the two things I am not talking about. I am talking about how climate change is affecting us in ways that matter to us. And I have begun conversations over, the fact that I'm a mom, or I love to ski, or I'm from Canada, or I live in Texas, or I love to knit, or I enjoy wine. I mean, I have started conversations with, almost anything that I might have in common with somebody. And how do I find out what I have in common with them? I ask them about themselves first, and I listen to what they say. And then talking about positive, constructive solutions. So let me share two stories. One is an older one that's actually in the book, and one is one from tonight. So in the book, I talk about how I gave a sermon actually just before COVID hit at the Meeting House, which some of you may be familiar with. It's a large distributed church in Southern Ontario. And I gave a sermon on Christians and climate change. And as I was standing by the door afterwards, listening to people as they walked out, one woman said to her friend as they were walking out, she said, "I've always been worried about climate change, but I never knew what to do." So doesn't that fit, right? Most of us are worried, 75% are worried, and half of us don't know what to do. So she said, "So I did nothing. But now I know what to do. I can eat our Christmas leftovers because I learned that food waste is a big contributor to climate change. That's what I'll do first." So it's just a matter of taking that one step. And then another woman said, "We're going to start a green team at the church." And so I said, "That's great. Invite everybody to join you, because I know there'll be more people who'd like to join." So that's just an example of the power of just taking one little step and having that conversation with somebody and saying, "Did you know? Did you know that that food waste is a big part of the problem? Did you know that you can get plant-based breakfast wraps at Tim Hortons?" And they have Tim Hortons here at Glasgow, of all places. "Did you know that, hey, I just bought an EV and it's great. I don't have to go to the gas station during COVID at all. I love that." Did you know? Did you know what my city is doing? Did you know what A Rocha is doing? Did you know there's so many amazing things that you can share with people from A Rocha. So tonight I had a conversation with a woman who teaches at a very small conservative Baptist university in Arkansas. And she said to me that most of our students here are not on board with climate change. But I talk to them about climate change and I make them watch one of your talks. And she said, the feedback I've got since they started watching one of your talks is actually pretty positive. And when they come into my office, she said, they have to sit in the outer office and wait. And so I bought a whole pile of your books and I piled them on the table. And that's the only thing there is to look at in the office. And she said, "I just want to let you know that there's just been a big change in the way that my students talk about this issue and how open they are, because they've been taught to see scientists as the enemy. But when they see a scientist who's saying that they're a Christian, who's explaining that they are a climate scientist because they're a Christian, they're willing to listen. And I'm seeing my students' minds change." That's the power of beginning a conversation with somebody over something that you agree with them on rather than something you disagree with them on. And for us, I mean, what is more central to our identity, to who we are, than our faith? I feel like many of us are like the man that it talks about in the book of James. You're like a man who looked in the mirror and then went away and forgot who he is. And so I don't see what I'm doing as trying to change who anybody is, but rather just holding up the mirror and trying to remind them of who they are. And, some people might not want to be reminded. Some people might not actually truly be believers, who knows? But many people, when we see ourselves in that mirror, we realize that is who God has made us to be. And that encourages us to live out, again, who God already made us and called us to be.
That's beautiful. So wonderful, Katharine. And thanks for going off script and sharing some very recent stories. That's great. We're on to our last question. And of course, if you want to weave in anything else, feel free. But I think I want you to leave us with a specific message of hope for the A Rocha community and Friends of A Rocha. What specifically do you have to share with us?
Well, often we picture climate action as a giant boulder sitting at the bottom of an impossibly steep cliff with only a few hands on it. We know that David Suzuki's hand is on that boulder. We know that Peter Harris's hand is on that boulder. We know that everybody else at A Rocha's hand is on the boulder. But sometimes we feel like that boulder is just sitting at the bottom of the cliff and it's just not moving. And so we think to ourselves, why bother adding my hand? Or we feel like I've already been pushing on that boulder for so long and I haven't seen any change. Why bother continue? Well, if you think that, let me tell you this. You stop and take a breath. And here's what you need to do. Look around. Look around at all the other hands that are on that boulder. Look at what is happening in A Rocha, India. Look at what's happening in A Rocha, Kenya. Look at what's happening in A Rocha International. Look at what's happening with Tear Fund. Look at what's happening with Plant with Purpose. Look at what's happening with World Vision Canada. Look at all the hands on the boulder. Follow some of these groups on social media. I love their social media posts. They're so encouraging. I was meeting with Tear Fund people today. They're so involved in climate change and poverty relief work. Follow them and just immerse yourself in the work that they're doing. And when you do that, when you just take that little breather and you stop and you look around at what everybody else is doing, you realize that giant boulder is not at the bottom of the cliff. That giant boulder is already at the top of the hill. It is already rolling down the hill in the right direction. And that boulder has millions of hands on it, millions of hands. So many people around the world that you don't even know about until you stop and take a look and find them. And when you realize how many people are pushing that boulder down the hill, and it's okay if you just take a little breather because there's people who will step up and push while you're taking a rest, but you realize how many people are doing it, you understand that, yes, if I put my hand back on that boulder, it will be going a little bit faster. And you know what? There might be somebody who looks over at me when they're feeling tired and exhausted and discouraged, and they'll see what I'm doing, and I can share what I'm doing with other people to help them and encourage them, knowing that, again, 50% of us feel hopeless and helpless. I can share what I've learned, not just about what A Rocha is doing, but about what other Christian organizations are doing, what other non-Christian organizations are doing. I can share that with other people. And that is how we encourage more people to add their hands to the boulder. Give them tangible things that they can do in their church, tangible things they can do in their personal life, tangible stories that they can share with other people, things that they can take to where they work, to their neighborhood, to their kids' school, to whatever organization they're part of. Tangible things that they can do so they can understand that every single one of us truly can make a difference, every one of us. And every time we add our hand to that boulder, it goes just a little bit faster.
We're in this together, bearing the weight together. It's beautiful. Well, I want to thank you, but also ask you one more question. What's, other than bedtime, what's on the schedule for you next?
Well, actually, and thank you for all the comments in the chat. That was amazing. You can get my book at Chapters Indigo. You can get it at your local bookstore. You can get it online as well. It's an Audible that I read myself. It's also an ebook, so you can get it pretty much anywhere books are sold. And today, it's been a busy day. So today was Saturday, and I started off, let's see, I met with colleagues. I filmed a documentary with Climate Reality. And here's actually a really cool story. So they were looking for a place where they could film inside because it was raining. And so they were calling all around the city to find a place. And they said, well, we found this cafe. Can you meet us at the cafe? So I went over to the cafe this morning. As I walked in, I realized that it was actually in St. George's Church where the climate vigil was being held tonight. And so we walked in and there were Tear Fund banners all around the church. And they positioned me for this climate reality movie that I'm doing with Al Gore with a Tear Fund banner right behind me. You know, talk about there being no coincidences at all. And that was just amazing. And then I went out and I joined the march of about 100,000 people, including a big faith contingent. Unfortunately, they were at the end and I was at the beginning, so I didn't connect up with them. I joined the march and then had a wonderful evening with the Climate Vigil and with the Christian Climate Observers. And then moving into this next week, I'm going to be doing all kinds of meetings. I'm participating in events with the delegation from the Bahamas. I'm doing a lot of interviews with NPR and the New York Times and different organizations like the BBC who want to know what's happening here at COP. I'm doing an event with Pete Buttigieg, who's the US Secretary of Transportation, talking about climate change and transportation. And I think I have about 6 to 7 events every single day. So those, yes. So if you want to pray for energy for me and also some chocolate, that would be great.
Send chocolate. That's great.
Yes.
Well, we are blessed by your passion and energy, even though your schedule just makes me dizzy. That's amazing. Thank you for your courage and your leadership and your good work. Be encouraged as you have shared with us. And thanks for staying up late, and have sweet dreams tonight.
My pleasure. It was so great to be with you all. And I'm so happy to be able to say happy anniversary and many, many, many more.
Indeed. Thank you, Katharine. Good night. Well, next, friends, I hope you were blessed by that and inspired. It's such a gift to have Katharine, as you can see by her busy schedule. Next, we want to celebrate by sharing a Google Earth presentation that represents significant moments over our 20+ year history. Yep, you heard me right. The seeds of A Rocha Canada did begin in 1995, as you'll see in this presentation. And well, we picked this year to celebrate 20 years based on when we became a charity. There were so many significant people who worked tirelessly to get to this point. Because we couldn't capture all the people, all the good people in this presentation who've given their heart and soul to this work, I'd just like to take a minute to recognize the additional pioneering efforts of Lauren and Mary Ruth Wilkinson, Tina Hildebrandt, Larry and Mira Danielson, Sue and Nick Farrow, Paul and Jenny Abell, Pete and Diana Schultens, Paul Heintzman and Monique, Kirsten Jeffrey Johnson, and all our past and present capable staff and volunteers. Thank you. We plan to update this presentation with more images and people and places over the coming months and years. But without further ado, enjoy this overview of the last 20.
A Rocha's journey in Canada begins in 1996, when A Rocha's international founders, Peter and Miranda Harris, spent a semester at Vancouver's Regent College, enchanting students and faculty alike with a vision of community-based creation care. During their time, a small group of students and community members caught the A Rocha bug and began to dream of creating an A Rocha project in Canada. In the late 1990s, a volunteer board of young visionary earthkeepers formed, and the dream started to take shape. In 2001, A Rocha Canada's office moved out of Karen Boisclair-Jolie's closet and into Marcoux and Leah Costamo's basement, where they were joined by the multi-talented Patrick Lilly, thus establishing A Rocha Canada's first full-time staff team. 2001 also marked our first conservation science monitoring project on salmon in Bertrand Creek in North Vancouver. In 2002, we launched our first day camp, held in East Vancouver in partnership with Grandview Calvary Baptist Church. In 2003, thanks to the generous partnership of Irvin and Harriet Leitz, A Rocha established the Field Study Center in South Surrey. A small team began welcoming kids on field trips, and conservation science research continued in the Tataloo or Little Campbell River watershed. In 2004, we launched the Community Supported Agriculture Project, or CSA, thanks to the green thumb and can-do attitude of Paul Neufeld. A Rocha took root in Manitoba in 2005 under the direction of Henry and Elma Martins, who established the Pembina Valley Interpretive Center. Early work in the area included an annual raptor count, the data from which helped establish the area as an internationally designated important bird area for migratory birds. Work in Manitoba expanded to Winnipeg in 2009, thanks to a partnership with St. Margaret's Anglican Church. A Rocha's urban project included day camps and establishing community gardens as folks marginalized by the dominant society tilled the soil on church properties and in abandoned lots and urban backyards. The same year, a similar project started in BC called Farm to Families, connecting underserved children, family, and seniors with farm-fresh veggies through gardening, cooking, and nutrition education. In 2010, the Arnold and Elizabeth Neufeld family began the donation process for the majestic Brooksdale Heritage Site in South Surrey. Later that year, the A Rocha staff, interns, and a flock of chickens made the 6-kilometer journey from the Field Study Center to their new home at Brooksdale. In 2011, A Rocha Canada joined the conservation big leagues with the discovery of the endangered Salish sucker. The discovery was made by Audrey F. Holman, a 19-year-old conservation intern. In 2014, thanks to the generosity and vision of Bill and Linda Hendry, A Rocha began a formal partnership with Cedar Haven Farm near Hamilton, Ontario, at the headwaters of Bronte Creek. The farm has become a hub for conservation studies and a place of welcome for Operation Wild, which hosts folks with barriers to getting outside and enjoying creation. In 2016, A Rocha went on title to the beautiful Brooksdale property in Surrey, BC, opening the opportunity for thousands of visitors and program participants to be welcomed into the warmth of A Rocha hospitality and programming each year. In 2017, we remember with much sadness and great fondness the passing of 2 beloved members of the Brooksdale community, Rob DeCoates and Taya Anderson. Also in 2017, under the steady leadership of Scott Gerbrandt and thanks to the generosity of Walter Lowen, A Rocha established the Boreal Ecology Center in East Braintree, Manitoba. Initial work has focused on conservation research and welcoming visitors on retreat where they can connect with the beauty of creation and the love of the Creator. During 2017 and 2018, A Rocha went through a leadership transition. We recognize with gratitude the contribution of A Rocha Canada co-founder Marcoux Costomo, as he passed the baton of national leadership first to Rick Faw as interim director, and then to longtime staff member Luke Wilson, who has been ably steering the A Rocha ship ever since. By 2019, the internship program at the Brooksdale A Rocha Center had become so popular that it had outgrown its digs. To solve the problem and to add 9 acres of sensitive wildlife habitat to the Brooksdale property, A Rocha began the purchase of the adjacent Hazelmere property. In 2020 marked the opening of A Rocha's Houston Nature Center in northern BC, the brainchild of Cindy Verbeek, a faithful A Rocha laborer for over 20 years. In closing, as we look back over the past 20 years, we thank God for all the volunteers, interns, and staff who have labored with sacrifice and joy. We celebrate all the species studied, all the land restored, all the vegetables grown, all the children educated, and we look toward the future with hope. May God continue to use A Rocha to inspire, train, and equip people to care for creation. And may the land and creatures we share neighborly life with be better for our presence.
Thank you so much, Leah, for excellent narration there, and what a beautiful presentation. I'm going to ask you all to do something for a minute, since we haven't heard any other voices across the participant and A Rocha family. Would you be willing to unmute and just give a happy anniversary, A Rocha? And we'll get the cacophony of everyone all at once. You ready? So unmute. 1, 2, 3.
Happy anniversary,
Hold on.
Oh, that's wonderful. If only we could be in the same room, it would be wonderful to be together tonight. But as you've probably heard repeated many times, a virtual event means we save significant energy and cost, and friends from all over the world are joining us. So there's some good upsides. And I did have garlic tonight for dinner, so you don't have to be a victim of that.
You can smile at Susan Fenderson.
Okay, now you can mute again. Please and thank you. So I'm going to share a reflection to remind us where we've come from and call us to grow in practical nature conservation and radical hospitality for the next generation. For so many of you like me, the A Rocha story has been a gift. A Rocha began because God inspired our friends Peter and Miranda Harris and many people like them to take a giant leap of faith. The Harrises moved from England to Portugal to study birds like migrating storm petrels and along the coastline of the Algarve. And they welcomed local people to loving conversations around the meal table. This humble beginning was a time when the environmental movement was mobilizing. Pollution, waste, overconsumption, and the resulting massive extinctions of the mosaic of creatures were the adverse outcomes of the Industrial Revolution. Finally, humans were waking up to the effects on us. The Harris Initiative gave a new and practical expression to the biblical call to show love for God's good world, people, birds, everything. The simple idea captured my imagination too. Yesterday, as I reflected on my journey with A Rocha, I wanted to share one of my many stories that inspired me early on. I met Stan Olsen, as some of you know him, now passed, at the A Rocha Field Study Center in South Surrey in 2009. He's a retired university librarian and a master naturalist. In his post-working years, Stan gave himself to weekly volunteering at A Rocha. Stan loved to lead these weekly bird walks, and I was new to A Rocha, so I was a bit skeptical of bird walks. How was this work? Walking and watching birds sounded like a fun hobby, which I was into, but I didn't see the larger purpose in simply looking at birds. This all changed as I got to know Stan, his passion for birds and all. He'd guide a group of anywhere from 3 to 12 people slowly along a path in the Campbell Valley Park at times. That's where we were. And he would sometimes hold out birdseed, and birds would come to his hand. He'd hear a bird song and immediately know it was a Pacific wren. He'd see a shadow in the air. Oh, that's a pileated woodpecker. Along the walk, Stan would record our findings and generously share insights into each individual bird species. He taught me that the red-breasted nuthatch could be identified because it likes to hop down trees upside down while looking for birds, or not birds, bugs and berries. Stan personifies the A Rocha ethos. His knowledge, his care and attention to detail, his generosity, but mostly his hospitable, kind, and consistent presence towards people and other creatures. Slowly, I learned why studying birds was critical conservation work, because birds indicate if a place is flourishing. If birds were present, then there were homes and food and water present. People like Stan who show love in action are what change the world and bring hope. I was attracted and called by A Rocha's invitation to live a life of care and worship, expressing love of God by taking care of what God made. And I suspect many of you share a version of this passion tonight. Over the next generation, our world needs more people like Stan if we're going to address a sick biosphere. At A Rocha, we believe the sickness stems from our disconnect with God, others, and the natural world. So, our big idea to address the overwhelming sickness and resulting biodiversity loss is to reconnect people to their place, to restore a relationship between all living things, as you've seen and heard tonight. We do this by immersing you in an experience of wonder, study, practical caretaking, and love of the local and particular birds, bugs, plants, trees, habitats, ecosystems, the natural world. And we believe that this can't be done in isolation, but with guidance from a wide mosaic of people of different ages, stages, ethnicities, experiences, who share a concern for the land, species, and people around them. That's why practicing hospitality and listening to people's stories has been so foundational over the last 20 years. Over the next 20 years, I believe A Rocha will continue to inspire thousands of kids of all ages, myself included, to learn to love the world around them. We want to focus our research and conservation efforts on the areas of most need. We'll build welcoming buildings and spaces in Manitoba and BC for people to experience radical hospitality and community. We'll strengthen and build new relationships with Indigenous people to help streams, species, and people and habitats flourish. And we'll prayerfully discern what places in Canada need another A Rocha, so that your kids will see migrating monarchs and swallows. We'll do all this because we want to have our grandkids marvel at salmon in the streams where you once saw salmon, so that the next generation of leaders are well prepared to face the growing eco-anxiety, climate migration, and need for radical lament, hospitality, and community. And so that the church finds new ways to reimagine its relationship with creation and its neighbors. We need that more than ever. If these are your hopes, our call to action is simple. Tonight and going forward for the next 20 years, the next generation, get to know your place. Get to know your place. How? Well, make your mission one of radical, personal, specific, and long-term connection to your place. Get to know the people, bugs, birds, trees, bees around you, and share a meal. Talk about what you love about your place. Listen together for what you're called to do practically to conserve and care for the place. And as your love grows, the world will heal. So I want to joyfully invite you to join us, A Rocha, for the next 20 years as we deepen our roots and bring hope in new streams with new people and new communities, responding to God's call to take care of the gift of his world. Amen.
A Rocha Canada is part of an international family, without which we wouldn't be who we are today. We are called to answer the particular needs in our local place in Canada, but the work is just as transformational, joyful, and rooted in prayer in other places all around the world. So today we also celebrate our global family, the fruits of whose labor we'll see in this video that shows what has been accomplished through the support of donors. As our hour together draws to a close, it's time to start offering some thanks. First to Casey, growing nonprofits, to StoryTap for generously providing their story collecting service, and to our champion sponsor, Eco Canada. Let's take a moment to learn about Eco Canada through a short video.
Who is Eco Canada? From job creation to wage funding to training and post-secondary accreditation, through expert labor market research and customized human resources solutions for business, Eco Canada champions the environmental sector and the end-to-end careers of environmental professionals. Are you an employer, decision maker, or hiring manager in a small to medium-sized business in construction, manufacturing, clean technology, or the blue economy? Eco Canada is here to help you build a greener workforce while benefiting your bottom line. Applying for funding is quick, easy, and will save you thousands in staffing costs. Through our Science Horizons internship program, Eco Canada, in partnership with Environment and Climate Change Canada, provides wage funding for employers looking to hire young professionals for full-time work placements and job training. Eligible STEM roles include work in water and the environment, waste management, sustainability, clean technologies, green building, and more. Funding is available for hiring youth and providing them with valuable training and mentorship opportunities in environmentally focused careers. In addition, our Digital Skills for Youth program allows you to leverage the technical knowledge of youth candidates to help future-proof your business. Eligible roles include digital marketers, developers, GIS specialists, drone operators, data analysts, or IT specialists with a focus on sustainability. These programs have been established to support the careers of Canadian environmental workers, giving them meaningful practical job experience and help build the world's leading environmental workforce, ensuring an adequate supply of skilled professionals for the future. Are you one of these employers? Are you involved in one of Canada's vital environmental industries? Funding is available. The application process is quick and easy. Apply now and see how you qualify to save thousands. Begin by going to our website, eco.ca/job-funding. Learn more about Eco Canada, the steward for Canada's environmental workforce.
Well, I think I'm spotlit. I believe someone else is supposed to pray. Am I right about that? All right, Marku, I'm going to call you out. Talk to Jesus for us, will you?
Actually, Marku and I are both going to pray. So join us in prayer as we close this evening. Creator, we give thanks for your spirit at work in and through A Rocha Canada over the past 20 years. We give thanks for all the many people who have joined in as team, board, volunteers, supporters, and participants over these many years.
May the next 20 years continue to be marked by A Rocha Canada's vibrant work and championing on behalf of voiceless creation and all those who are marginalized. We pray during this time, particularly for all those gathered at COP26, including the many A Rocha representatives and Katharine Hayhoe there. May your spirit breathe life on all the proceedings and conversations. We offer all this in gratitude. Amen.
Amen.
Well, I'm sure Katharine Hayhoe read her own book well for Audible. She should have hired you, Leah. Well, friends, while our main event is finished, please stick around to join a special breakout room reunion with your A Rocha batchmates. You'll have a chance to self-select which room to join, and each room is labeled by a period. So for example, 95 to 2005, 2006 to 2010, etc. And there's a room for folks who are new to A Rocha and would like to learn more. Lastly, 2 rooms are free for us to use for those who want to organize a catch-up with familiar faces, or for anyone who wants to take their chances on meeting new people. These rooms are available till 5:30, at which point we'll have to say goodbye. Some more special thanks to Jeremy Whittingstall for web support, to StoryTap, for Hannah Mae Henry in Wakefield for videos, to the SFU meeting event and conference services team hosting our Zoom, to the 20th anniversary planning committee, Leah Costamo, Dezane Huber, Sarah Walker, Jennifer Brozas, and Danny Piezas. And I think that is all.